All right, everybody, we're back. The certified yapper's back. So it's very sad. I actually have a very nice camera. This is what it looks like. And I started charging the battery for it because I know the camera quality on these videos is not very good. I'm just using my phone. However, so to edit, to be able to edit from my camera, I would have to put the SD card on an SD reader, and I'd have to be able to plug the SD reader into a laptop. But my personal laptop is really broken, and so I have to use my work laptop, and my work laptop blocks the SD reader and a lot of other stuff that I try to put in it, so I can't edit it that way, so I have to edit it on my phone. So I do have to use my phone quality. So just to get that out of the way, if anybody would like to buy me a new laptop, that might be pretty cool. But today we're going to be talking about Oscar bait movies. So I was thinking about this because I was watching a TikTok the other day about Wicked. I've seen a lot of TikToks about Wicked, first of all, because the press tour is kind of just like a weird sight to behold, honestly. Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo are crying every second of every day on this press tour. They're going through the trenches as singing Broadway actors, apparently. So, but a TikToker that I came across theorized that maybe the reason why they keep crying all the time is because they're kind of trying to increase their chances of Wicked getting nominated for an Oscar, and for the actors themselves getting nominated for an Oscar. Kind of make the case for Wicked's Oscar nomination and prove that the film has emotional merit, kind of, or just, it has a deeper meaning beyond what the audience is going to think of Wicked based on maybe the musical. But it got me thinking about Oscar season. Wicked's coming out at the perfect time for Oscar season. It's coming out November 22nd, which as of this recording is going to be this Friday. Maybe I'll go see it. And it got me thinking about Oscar bait in general, Oscar bait movies, what movies are intended for Oscar bait, what makes a movie kind of Oscar bait-y. They're not necessarily inventive, creative, don't do anything new, don't do anything visually or, thematically interesting, but they are just made to be sometimes kind of sad, kind of poverty, people say, to get nominated for an Oscar. We're going to start with musicals. Let me pose for the thumbnail really quick because I've been not doing that lately. Good. So, musicals. So, in my opinion, it is a little bit annoying for a movie adapted from a successful Broadway play to win an Oscar. I mean, I think in general, it's just a little bit annoying on the part of directors and writers to take something that already exists, pretty much copy and paste it exactly, especially with musicals because it is exactly the same music as well, and it has to fit into the plot somewhere, And they just turn it into a movie. They get a bunch of fancy celebrities, and then they're like, it's Oscar time, baby. But it's a little bit annoying for a movie adapted from a Broadway musical to win an Oscar unless it's exceptionally good or adds something interesting to the story. So I know that Wicked is going to be broken apart into two pieces, much like the last Harry Potter movie was broken apart into two pieces. Now, is this a money grab? Probably yes. But hopefully, because something I also saw on TikTok was that each movie is going to be about 2 hours long, and that's about as long as the stage play was. So hopefully they're going to add a little bit of extra depth in there. I also was watching, I don't know how accurate it is, but this man, he was hired to be basically the Oz historian on Wicked. So hopefully they are going to be going more into the lore of Oz, which might be kind of interesting. I think it would be just an interesting take, and I wouldn't be mad at the movie for that. But otherwise, if it's a copy and paste, as most Oscar-nominated musical movies are, I'm going to be really annoyed about it, especially if it sweeps the Oscars. That is just going to tick me off. It's really going to grind my gears. According to the New York Theater Guide, Wicked is about female friendship, discrimination, governmental corruption, and the musical shows how the iconic characters in The Wizard of Oz came to be. So, with that just very short synopsis, I've never seen Wicked, but it seems like it could merit, some kind of emotional, some kind of something. It could give us a little bit of something, and if the adaptation is new for the movie, it could go more into depth about, not just the love side of the play, the whole love triangle stuff that's going on, or the musical side, or the beautiful spectacle side and the special effects, but it could go more into politics, maybe, society, race. I hate to say society because I feel like I say it all the time, but movies are about society, whether we like it or not. So it could be interesting. And Wicked, like many movies adapted from musicals, is poised to be nominated for a lot of awards and to win a lot of awards. I went over some, kind of iconic movies that are adapted from musicals. There's so many of them, by the way, way too many of them, very annoying. But Les Mis was nominated for 8 Oscar categories in 2013 and won in 2 categories. Cabaret was nominated in 10 Oscar categories and won in 8. That movie is very good, but that's just because the play is very good, so I don't know what to make of that. But, I love Liza Minnelli in that movie. She kills it. It's so good. The Sound of Music was nominated in 10 categories and won in 5, so that's a lot. Moulin Rouge was nominated in 8 categories and won in 2 categories. And West Side Story, the 1962 Oscars, was nominated in 11 categories and won all but 1 category. So it even won Best Picture, which is pretty remarkable in my opinion for especially a musical. And then West Side Story, the one that was in the 2022 Oscars, was nominated for 7 categories and only won in 1. Ariana DeBose won for Best Supporting Actress, and I agree that it should not have been nominated for that many categories, and I'm glad that it didn't win for anything, because Steven Spielberg copy and pasted a movie that was already copy and pasted from a musical. So that's super annoying, number 1. Number 2, it only was probably nominated because it had a star-studded cast. And number 3, he put Ansel Elgort in the lead after all the stuff came out about Ansel Elgort preying on young women. So I don't know why he did that. He literally could have picked anybody else. Ansel Elgort can sing, but he's not known for his singing abilities. He could have picked a more talented singer, and that would have been cooler, I think, anyways, because who's actually an Ansel Elgort fan these days? Exactly. And Cats was not nominated for anything, but worth mentioning, James Corden, am I right? So something that I think about as far as musicals in movies, in musicals and Oscar nominations specifically. First of all, side note, I do want to mention Oscars is a whole different beast on its own thing. I know the Oscars are not perfect. Of course, it's everybody's dream to win an Oscar, including mine. Can't lie. But I do know that the Oscars has a lot of problems, which I'm going to kind of try to go into. And the Oscars is just, kind of inherently a political thing, which is not really fair to actual good films out there. But so first of all, I want to touch on, I just feel like theater should kind of be its own art form. And I do think more people should know about theater. But I don't know if the answer to that is adapting everything that already exists into a movie. So what I mean by that is, I personally don't know a lot of theater or musical theater. That's just because I'm not a theater person. But I do enjoy seeing plays whenever I do go to see something in theater. I'm always really blown away. I really enjoy it. A lot of my friends are kind of theater people, no offense to them. And I really enjoy watching theater when they take me to plays, when they show me something. And I think theater is just its very own separate art form. It's not really translated the same into movies like people think it could be. So theater acting, first of all, is a different kind of acting. When you work on the theater, you project differently, you express really differently because you have to reach the audience. You speak differently. Your phrasing is different. It's kind of a little bit more dramatic, and it's like funny. It's like supposed to be a little bit more dramatic, but I think that's what makes it enjoyable. It's its own separate thing. That doesn't make it, any less of an art form than movies. Theater is the oldest, form of acting. Some things are meant for theater and not meant for movies. Like it loses its meaning when it becomes a movie. So, for example, theater, when you go to see a theater live, it's like a spectacle. So I think part of sometimes the magic of theater is like being blown away by, I can't believe they put this on stage. Like, how did they make this happen? I remember one time I went to go see a Christmas Carol when I was in middle school, and it was at this college. I don't remember what college it was, but it was amazing because they had a rotating stage. So each scene, like the actors didn't like close the curtain and get off the screen. They just like rotated the stage, and it was in a new setting. And that was like fantastical. And like to see, things moving that you wouldn't expect to move, or seeing things light up and move across the stage was what made the experience really interesting. And that's something that can't be translated into film. So going back to Wicked specifically, I was doing a little bit of research, and there's these amazing scenes in Wicked the musical where Galinda, she comes down in a little stream of bubbles on stage. How did they do that? And they have Elphaba flying in on her broom on stage. How did they do that? That's like the magic of being able to see that in person is like, whoa, like that's so cool. And in a movie, in Wicked, the movie that's going to come out with Ariana Grande, it's just going to be CGI. And that's, number one, not fun. I don't like CGI as compared to like practical effects. And CGI doesn't look as good. CGI just looks fake and cartoony and, just not special to me. So I feel like putting that into a movie makes it lose some of its wow factor spectacle. You know what I'm saying? Also, Cats, just to, go back to why Cats kind of flopped. To see, if you've ever seen Cats, the musical play, that is an insane environment to be in. It's so weird. It truly makes you feel like I was on a cruise and I was drinking when I saw Cats, but it's so confusing and you don't know what's happening at all. And that's kind of the magic of Cats. And I think to try to translate that into a movie where it just goes from like person to person, and the magic of Cats too is that it's in one location. It doesn't change location. There's no in between scenes. There's no extra props. It's just the magic kind of comes from the actors dancing, their amazing athletic ability, like all the cool dance moves that they do, the acrobatics that they do, and the live beautiful singing is what makes the movie interesting. And it's like weird and like rhymey, and it makes you feel weird, and it's like slam poetry kind of. So that's the magic of Cats. And to put that into a movie is just like weird. Like it's not going to work. A movie like Cats is just not going to work on the screen. CGI, obviously, terrible idea. Something I was also thinking about, my friends are really big Hamilton people, is Lin Manuel Miranda, for all the crap that I give him for being kind of cringy as a person. Number one, Lin Manuel Miranda is a very, very talented person. I make fun of him, but truly, I am so impressed by him. He comes up with all the music from Hamilton he came up with. I'm like, how did you write all of those songs and they all make a story together? Like, that is really cool. And to watch the play, when you watch it on Disney Plus, it's a good like musical. It's really interesting. I just hate the video of him rapping on public transit. That's insane. But anyways, I give Lin Manuel Miranda credit because he's like, yeah, we can't make a movie adaptation of Hamilton. So he only allowed a recording of the actual stage play to be the movie version, the film version of Hamilton. And I respect that because theater is just a different art entirely. And to try to put Lin Manuel Miranda's art, which is kind of like, it's almost like a single take almost, to try to put that into a movie, is just not going to work. It's like a continuous single take, constant music, constant story stuff going on, and that's what makes Hamilton good. So I guess just overall, my general idea is not every play needs to be a movie, and not every play should be a movie. Especially not every musical play should be a movie, in my opinion. But all that being said, I think the reason why musicals continue to be adapted into movies is because it's not really a risk. Number one, if it's a successful play, it will be a successful movie. People are going to want to see it because they're fans of the play. Maybe they've never been able to see it on Broadway before, or maybe they're a huge Broadway fan and they're excited to see it as a movie. So it's going to be a big hit, and it's going to get a lot of Oscar nominations. So number one, because inherently to make a musical, they have to be a spectacle. You have to put costuming work in. You have to get big stars that people are going to want to see. You have to get people who can sing that you're going to want to see, maybe singers who are not normally actors like Beyonce and Dreamgirls. And you're going to have to get beautiful set design to make the musical something really worth seeing. So already we got 2 categories knocked off, costuming and set design, as Oscar categories. And they're probably going to win for that because it takes a lot to make a good musical. And I think a lot of musicals, if they are nominated for Oscars, they kind of deserve to win for set design because it probably a lot of work goes into that. But I also think kind of like there's a nostalgia, maybe at least in America, of old Hollywood when we see musicals. So musicals are very much golden age of Hollywood coded, as people say. So without getting into it a whole lot, because I don't want to do like a whole history lesson, I don't really want to pull sources, but maybe I'll try to link an article down below. But musicals dominated the golden age of Hollywood in part because of the Hays Code, and from a variety of factors too, but in part because of the Hays Code. Because the Hays Code, if you didn't know, is there was no rating system in movies before. So the Hays Code actually worked with the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church kind of instituted the Hays Code into existence. And part of the stipulations were that it has to be family friendly. The whole family has to be able to see it. No cursing, no nudity, no sex, none of that stuff. And the characters could not really be morally ambiguous. So that had to be a protagonist. The protagonist had to pretty much do good things. They had to win and come out on top in the end. And then whoever was bad had to be punished in the end. And then the hero gets, a good ending, and they get to have a happy ending. And musicals really fall into that structure, if that makes sense, especially kind of like romantic movies. They don't have to worry about not following the family friendliness, or especially not like with the hero. The heroes are very clear in musicals, I feel, right? If we think about any kind of classic musical or play examples, we know who the hero is. They do good things, they win, the bad guy is bad. And so it's just easily defined. And look, musicals are kind of like merry usually, that have a happiness to them. And so it just fits right into that kind of family friendly nature, unless it's like Les Mis, that's not very happy. So I keep talking about spectacle with the Hays Code, but that's part of like the draw to those old Hollywood classic movies, was the spectacle. So if it was beautiful, people would, especially when times were tough, feel a little bit more excited to go spend money on a movie because it's going to make you feel good and it's beautiful and it's really well done. Also, because musicals are expensive in set design, costuming, all-star cast, that means the production company is a lot more likely, in my opinion, to campaign for it. So if you didn't know, I actually didn't find out until just like a couple years ago, recently, that production companies campaign for their movie to be nominated for various awards. So in the Oscars, the Oscar has the Academy, and the Academy is made up of people that we, the public, do not know, but that the people in the film industry do probably know. So it is producers, it is executives, it is filmmakers, it is actors. It's all kinds of people that are already in the industry. So not only are you probably friends with these people. I keep calling her Marilyn Monroe. If Meryl Streep was in the Academy and you are Steven Spielberg and you're friends with Meryl Streep and you just made a movie, Meryl Streep is a little bit more likely to vote for your movie because she's your friend and she, already has a good opinion of you and probably thinks you already make good movies, right? So that's kind of messed up. But because they're so expensive, they're going to go hard on campaigning it to the Oscar Academy because they want it to have recognition and to make more money. It makes sense then, like, why somebody like Steven Spielberg would be nominated even for a musical like West Side Story, which is not an original idea at all. So the next segment I wanted to talk about is period dramas. The Oscars loves a period drama, okay? Specifically about racism. A pattern that I've noticed, and I know I'm not the only person, I know I've certainly seen articles and other sources about this, is that the Oscars love a period drama about racism in the US, usually during the civil rights movement in the past. And there's a couple problems with that I see. First of all, these period dramas about African Americans are often the only kinds of movies that Black people ever get nominated for. They're honestly sometimes the only times we see a Black actor win. They're often not even directed or written by Black people, only in some cases, but historically not very many of them. And they are just about Black people going through a hard time. And Black people do go through a hard time. I mean, I don't want to act like they don't exist and like those films are not worth talking about. But that is often it's just like the same everywhere you go. Like, you can compare all those movies to each other and they can be boiled down to like kind of the same two ideas. Racism bad, racism in the past. So some movies that break the mold I want to mention: Get Out, Moonlight, American Fiction, which was nominated recently. And that is honestly all that I can think of off the top of my head, which is probably not very good. I'm just going to go over some of my ideas. So a problem I see with this is that it places racism in the past. And although these films go over racism and they kind of talk about people overcoming very traumatic and very difficult experiences in time, and it kind of, puts the blame on American society, and it is honest usually about, it doesn't really sugarcoat the violence and oppression that people faced. And it does highlight often real people, which is good. It also paints racism as a problem of the past that by the end of the movie is usually overcome in a way, so it also usually has a happy ending with, the Black main characters. They're like, yes, finally, we overcame racism. We did it. We marched on Selma and we did it. And now we have a Black president. And that's just kind of like the whole tone and theme of the movie across all of those Oscar nominated movies. They're all the same. Okay. And, it doesn't touch on what is going on right now with racism, or what is going on, what are problems that we see that people may not realize are racist or are a problem for Black people that needs to be touched on, needs to be addressed, because we already know that racism existed in the past. We don't need to fix anything. That's not really like a learning opportunity for us. And that's not to say that some of those movies shouldn't exist. I'm going to go over a few movies that I really think are very good films and are, deserve the Oscar hype and deserve to be made, especially for learning opportunities. I don't want to take away the opportunity for children to watch a movie in class that is about a historical event that they should probably know about, because it's entertaining and you should learn about it, and you should be, you should enjoy learning about it, and it helps that historical fact stick in your mind more. Also puts Black actors and Black characters in the exact same roles. It's the same kind of character of, usually it's a very likable Black character, if that makes sense. So Malcolm X is a little bit different because Malcolm X was hated by American society when he was alive. Looking back on Malcolm X and the Black Panthers, we kind of understand why Black people were pissed off, obviously, to put it extremely, very mildly and very stupidly. But most of these Black characters are Harriet Tubman, Martin Luther King Jr., leaders of the civil rights movement who participated in peaceful protest, who, were polite and kind. A lot of them, had a strong religious belief, so they were agreeable people to get behind. They were just like, hey, I think we should stop being racist. And they didn't engage in violence of any kind. They were very agreeable. And that puts actors and characters into just one small little thing. Most of the Oscar nominated and winning characters kind of fit into this same category of like agreeable Black person going through a very difficult time, basically. And we hardly ever see Black characters or actors getting recognized for something other than Black character who suffered from racism 50 to 70 years ago in the past or during slavery. That's a big problem because, number one, not only do Black people suffer today, side note, that doesn't mean that we should only make movies about Black people suffering, but Black people go through a multitude of experiences that are not just, rooted in Jim Crow era laws, you know what I'm saying, or slavery. And it also excludes really good stories made by Black filmmakers, Black writers, and Black actors from getting attention. It's sad to say that to be honest, I don't know a lot of other films that do have Black characters because they don't get a lot of attention. And I think that's kind of something that we've been talking about in the last 5-ish, 7-ish years, but not a lot has changed as far as movies that get theater release, movies that get recognition, movies that get Oscars. In my notes, I wrote, it's very generic, strip that down for me by Liam Payne pop music of the movie world, if that makes sense to you. It's just generic plug and chug stuff into a movie that will get nominated for an Oscar because it's sad. And that doesn't mean anything to the viewer. It doesn't mean anything for films. It's not changing the world. It's not good, honestly. It's not a good movie. From CBR, the Comic Book Review, I read an article about their Oscar bait movie list, and this is what they have to say about Green Book. So, though well-constructed and comparatively high-minded, it takes no distinguishable risks, either visually or with its source material. It decries racism in a manner that makes it easy to agree with without actually engaging the topic. So, kind of really sums up really eloquently kind of what I've been trying to say in this segment. It's nothing new. Some examples of films like this that I've been talking about are Green Book, which was mentioned in the article. And Green Book is a little bit worse because it has a white savior complex, and it may have worked a few decades ago, but we've moved past that time period. So what I kind of mean by that is like perhaps in the past there was a place for films like that to just kind of, I guess, like teach and to, I don't know, bring movies up to speed, but we've come past that point in society. We need to have more in-depth conversations about Black people other than they face racism and white people could do something about it. That's like very silly. Hidden Figures is another example, though I do like Hidden Figures, the movie, and I think it was worth going into because these are women who were kind of lost to history in a way. They just weren't being taught in history classes. I didn't really know anything about them before we saw the movie. So I do think that movie was worth being made. It was well done as well. And they are so important to American history. We didn't know about them, and this movie made us pay attention to them. So I think that's a good movie. Rustin, again, I actually really like Rustin. I really liked the way it was directed. It was very exciting. The pacing was very interesting. I really enjoyed Rustin. Rustin is pretty different than these other kind of like historical dramas from that time period. Again, really well made. Coleman Domingo is such a good actor. I can't believe he didn't get an Oscar for that movie. It was really well done and you should go see that movie. That's a great movie, and it really explores a part of history that is often not talked about what it means to be gay during the civil rights movement is a very niche topic, and I think that is really interesting. And he was kind of like lost to history, and he's an important figure in the civil rights movement. Selma, another example. 12 Years a Slave. Oscars love movies about slavery. The Help, The Color Purple, If Beale Street Could Talk, Fences, Driving Miss Daisy, Driving Miss Daisy, Ray, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. Again, important story because it hadn't really been told before, about an important figure in history, but you get it. Harriet, Glory, and you could go on and on. That's so many movies that I just listed. That's just kind of like in recent memory even. And then another type of period drama that the Oscars really love that I thought I would mention is kind of that like Tudor era of England, Elizabethan, Victorian England. And I honestly have not seen a lot of the films that I'm about to mention, but the Oscars do eat them up every single time. Some notable mentions are Victoria and Abdul, The Favorite, Jane Eyre, Poor Things does take place in that time, kind of, but it's pretty different. Sweeney Todd, Little Woman, Pride and Prejudice, Emma, Mary Queen of Scots, on and on and on. Same time period, and the Oscars love it. And then also another honorable mention is Nazi Germany. The Oscars love films that take place during Nazi Germany. Now, I will say, of course, as I kind of touched on with, films about the Civil Rights era and about Black African American history, films about Nazi Germany are important, we need to see that. We need to teach people about that, especially because Holocaust deniers exist, which is a crazy, crazy thing. More nuanced take, like nobody's really going to learn from something that we already know is bad. We just love Nazis. The Oscars love Nazis. You heard it here first. So the next section I wanted to go over, weird kind of category, but it's just generally like people suffering / poverty porn, as they call it. I called this section the general misery section. Oscars love people being sad. I do think there is a place for movies that deal with very sad subject matter and people going through very difficult experiences. So, for example, Moonlight. I think for the time that Moonlight came out, which was 2016, I believe, when it won for Best Picture, I think Moonlight was a very necessary movie because up until that point, LGBT people in Oscar-nominated films and in films that just got recognition in general were either villainous, kind of the butt of a joke, not taken seriously, seen as unwell, mentally ill. And I could go deeper into this. I apologize for not really doing an in-depth kind of conversation on this. I don't think that specifically for this movie, gay issues had gotten a lot of attention. Now, that's not to say that other LGBT people have gotten more attention, because they certainly have not. And they certainly have not been portrayed in the best ways in popular films, in recognized films, certainly not in Oscar-nominated films. Honestly, I can't think of a really positive portrayal of an LGBT person, specifically a trans person, in recent memory that was nominated for an Oscar, which is very sad. Moonlight kind of teaches people, I guess, why it's important to care about gay people in a weird way, and specifically to talk about Black people can be gay, people who are marginalized can also be gay. So it kind of touches on intersectionality and why the main character ended up the way that he was. So I think people who go to jail are very stigmatized by society, even if we don't like to admit it. When we hear that somebody has gone to jail, we immediately just think that they're not a very good person. We think that if they got in trouble for selling drugs, they must be lazy. To put it in very basic terms, that this person not only emotionally was suffering at every corner of his life. He couldn't escape at home. He couldn't escape with friends. He couldn't escape at school. At every corner, he had something against him. And in order to kind of retaliate against that, he got aggressive because he didn't know any other way to kind of deal with what he was dealing with, and he didn't have support in basically any corner. And it also kind of touches on his mother is addicted to drugs, which is very sad, which is another thing that is very stigmatized. And on one hand, yes, it really affects his life negatively that his mom was not there for him, and she honestly was not a very good mother. However, we can't think she's just pure evil, because she also has her own story of why she ended up the way that she was. And at the end of the film, when he goes to visit her in the hospital, I believe, I think it's like a rehab place maybe, she apologizes and she's like, you know, I love you, you're my son, and you know, I know that you had a very hard life and I am part of the reason why you had a hard life. So that's just like a very basic, simple overview of what makes Moonlight a very special movie. Though it is about somebody suffering, there is a purpose to that story being very sad, because it's supposed to have the viewer take away from that very sad experience that we should not judge people because they go to jail because they're addicted to drugs. We should not automatically have this stigma about Black people in America specifically who go to jail, who do drugs. We should not have this automatic depiction of what a gay person is and what their life looks like, because there's so many intersections of what makes a person, and if we really want to care about people and not fail people, we have to, you know, it doesn't address this in the movie, but basically we have to create programs and we have to create a society that supports these people so that they don't commit crimes. You know what I'm saying? If the main character had more support in his life, let's say from the school, let's say less stigma about him being gay, let's say he had the freedom to date who he wanted to date and he didn't feel bad about that, he may not have ever gone to prison, basically. So before I go into this section, I do want to acknowledge some of these films are worth making. I think actually a lot of these films are worth making. However, some of them were just made to kind of exploit people that are suffering, and there's no solution at the end. So again, I don't think Moonlight necessarily falls into this category, but a lot of these Oscar-nominated films are about poor people really suffering, and there is no help for them. They fall into crime and drug abuse to kind of cope with living a very difficult life, being surrounded by very difficult circumstances, not having a lot of resources, not having social programs, and there is no solution at the end. There's not even kind of like a call to action at the end. It's just like, yeah, that shit sucked, didn't it? And I think that kind of calls back to like the pull yourself up by the bootstraps mentality that we have in America, that I will go over in another video in the future, I hope one day. But I overall don't think that's positive for films at all, because it leaves the viewer with, wow, their life is really sad. They're really going through a hard time. And it doesn't leave the viewer with, wow, we as an American society can do something about this. We can vote for people that are going to put social programs in order that are going to help these people go to college, afford food, afford psychological treatment, afford healthcare, afford other things that will help these people in the situation. You know, kind of a dumb way of me saying that, but it doesn't do anything with the sad fact of what the movie has given us. It's just like, wow, their life fucking sucked, didn't it? They're poor, they're sad, people are not nice to them. And then, kind of something I've always heard before is like, often liberals will say, or Democrats will say, something really needs to be done about this, and then nothing is done about this. And that's kind of how I feel about some of these Oscar-nominated movies. We say, wow, their life is very difficult, something needs to be done about this, but nobody does anything about this. The actor is a millionaire who never has to worry about money for the rest of their life. They win an Oscar, they get all this praise, nothing happens. They don't donate to any charities, maybe they call to action, but nothing happens. And honestly, most of the time, none of these Hollywood people are brave enough to even say that we need to do something and really bring action to the issue. So with that being said, here's some of the movies that are Oscar nominated that are kind of like just, suffering pornography. So Hillbilly Elegy, shout out to JD Vance. Not really. Slumdog Millionaire. Now I will note this is a good movie because it it is very different from the American style of movie, being that it's kind of a Bollywood movie, and it has just a very different feel than a traditional American movie. So it's very interesting, but overall it's about somebody suffering and being lucky enough to win an award show and save a woman. Billboard outside of Ebbing, Missouri. Moonlight, again, very important film. Precious, The Florida Project, again, touches on some important content, kind of is like a slice of life for why people unfortunately make negative decisions. But just to kind of give you guys an idea about the kinds of movies that the Oscar wants to win, and how the Oscar system is kind of political, kind of rigged, doesn't really give us a good example of films that are truly life-changing and that truly mean something. I'm going to list off some Oscar-nominated snubs, or some Oscar snubs, that should have won more, should have been recognized more, that were not. And I'm sure some of you will see that a lot of these are like your favorite movies. So, Portrait of a Lady on Fire. If you have not seen this movie, you need to watch it immediately. This is such a beautiful and complex story. Snubbed for an Oscar, wasn't even nominated for an Oscar. So I don't know if it like missed the deadline, but that's like one of the best movies I've ever seen, honestly. Beautiful film. That was snubbed for an Oscar. Barbie, as we all know, my feelings about Barbie, snubbed for an Oscar. Not fair. The Truman Show was snubbed for an Oscar. Isn't that insane? It was not even nominated. And that's one of the greatest movies of all time, truly. Eternal Sunshine was snubbed, though. It was only nominated in 2 categories, if you can believe that. One being Best Original Screenplay, which it did win for. But it was not nominated for Best Picture. What? It wasn't nominated for Jim Carrey? What? Or any of the other actors? Huh? That was such a good film. I cannot believe that did not win more. Amazing screenplay, so it should have won for that, but not Best Picture. What are we talking about? The Dark Knight was snubbed for Best Picture that year. The Dark Knight did not win that year. Crazy. Brokeback Mountain was snubbed for Best Picture. That did not win that year. Pulp Fiction did not win for Best Picture that year as well. It lost to Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump is a good movie. I wouldn't give it Best Picture above Pulp Fiction. And again, in my opinion, perhaps Forrest Gump won because it's kind of a sad theme about a man suffering. Roma lost to Green Book for Best Picture that year. Are we being so serious? What are we talking about? Green Book is not something that's going to go down in the history books. That makes me think the Oscars is evil and rigged. That's just kind of my ideas about what movies are Oscar bait, what kind of movies the Oscar wants to win in their special system. That being said, if I ever write a movie one day and they're thinking about nominating me for an Oscar, I still would like to win. So hopefully the Academy is made up of different people by then. Hopefully I can become good friends with Meryl Streep and she will nominate me because I'm sure she's part of the Academy. I actually don't know because it's a secret, but yes. So anyways, thank you for joining me on another one of my videos. Thank you for joining Certified Yapper Talks about Oscar bait movies and yells in the camera about films that make me mad. And I hope to see you next time. Again, follow me. If you want to subscribe and like and do all that good stuff, please do. I really would appreciate that. That'd be awesome. Follow me on TikTok. The handle is at Madam Adam Driver, but the name is Dingus McClingus on TikTok. I don't really post about anything relevant on there, but that's where I am. I don't want to give you guys my Instagram because I don't want you to follow me and know where I work and stuff. And maybe I'll be back on Letterboxd. Yeah, the YouTube channel is Unemployed Movie Critic. Thank you for joining me so much. Thank you so much, and I'll see you again next time.